Studios have this incredibly annoying and infuriating habit of churning out trailers, teasers, and sneak peeks of games that are not anywhere near close to being finished and ready to be released. Studios will just come in, drop a random trailer for a random game they're working on, and then they go into radio silence mode, and we won't hear anything about the game for years or a literal decade or even decades later. That is, if the game isn't cancelled altogether in the meantime. We've seen this happen with Elder Scrolls, The Wolf Among Us 2, the new Mass Effect, GTA, and literally all kinds of other games across genres and platforms. The reasons range from actually understandable ones to nonsensical ones, and of course to shady, manipulative, and desperate ones. So let's go over why studios, sometimes even purposefully, choose to do this. Let's start with actual, understandable, and logical reasons behind this practice. For example, the recent Legacy of Valor cinematic trailer made perfect sense to me, as they wanted to generate some genuine interest in their game and announced that their Kickstarter campaign would be starting soon. So obviously, giving a small taste of what the game will look like to the audience you're about to ask for support makes sense, of course. So does wanting to get the word of your game out there so as to attract new people for positions that you're in need of. Those are genuinely good and understandable reasons why you put out a trailer years before the game is supposed to come out. However, for this to be considered an understandable practice, there needs to be a careful balance, and there also needs to be transparency in said trailers. Do not show or promise things you have no idea whether you can deliver on yet, or show any aspects of a game when you have no idea whether you can implement them in the final product. Just show a teaser and explain clearly that this is not in any way, shape or form representative of what your game will look like, as it is still a work in progress, and make yourself clear that this trailer is intended to attract new hires or to ask for support. Otherwise, this will surely come back to bite you later on. The next reason this happens is good but also bad depending on how you view this. So for me, I'd say it belongs in more of a "it just is what it is" kind of reason, because while frustrating, it is understandable that some studios just operate like this as a strategy, and it's part of their identity as a studio. The biggest example of this is of course Rockstar, who notoriously take forever to put out a game but will tease the game throughout the decades-long wait because that's just their MO. They go for massive new games with revolutionary new graphics and technology that always end up revolutionizing the entire industry itself, and also setting a new standard for every other new game that comes out after theirs as well. So I am adding this here because while some may find this annoying, they aren't really fooling the consumer, because when they do finally release their game, they always deliver on their promises and sometimes even surpass them. And they know they can play the waiting game because they've gained gamer trust, and while the wait is annoying, we always end up buying their games because we do get what was promised, and their games are so massive that we end up playing them for years on end, especially since they always release an online version of the game after the single player experience is completed. And the online versions of said games are able to generate enough profit for them for years to come without them feeling or even having the need to keep making new games and installments every few years in order to remain relevant and or generate profit. So this is truly a case of do not hate the player, hate the game situation, as studios have realized what has been going on and some of them have managed to master it. So in my opinion, this is not a bad excuse, since they aren't being duplicitous, they're just making this practice work for them. So while the devs are busy building this next massive new game that will set a new standard for the entire industry and generate billions for the company, Rockstar can just relax on the helm and just aura farm, I guess, since they know that they can get away with it.
I don't flex, I'm success. I don't flex, I'm success. Effortless, see I got it. I don't flex, I'm success. I don't flex, I'm success. I don't flex, I'm success. Effortless, see I.
And this kind of reminds me of that quote, is it arrogance if it's true? Because they know they can afford to play this waiting game because they know they can back it up with their final product. Then we move on to kind of weird waters where the line between good and bad kind of blurs. Because sometimes studios will announce a game out of pure desperation and sometimes out of pure fear, even if the actual development of the game is still in its very early stages. Mark Dara, who has been a bit of a controversial figure lately, especially as an ex-BioWare employee, has explained that sometimes studios will churn out a trailer out of pure fear that the publisher will axe their game or the entire studio.
It might be because the studio wants the game to be announced because they're worried that the publisher is going to kill it otherwise.
So they want to make a public commitment and kind of force the hand of the publisher to wait for the next game to come out because maybe, just maybe, that one will be the hit they want. We've seen them do this with the new Mass Effect. Like I mentioned in that video about the sheer state of BioWare and whether there is any hope for the new Mass Effect game, they released like 2 trailers I think, and there's been radio silence ever since, aside from some teasing tweets here and there. So I do think they preemptively locked in the next Mass Effect installment to hopefully convince EA that even if the Veilguard failed, which it did, there was hope yet, in the form of a bigger and better futuristic science fiction game that everyone will surely love this time, and it will also definitely perform much better. So please wait, don't shut us down yet. We have another idea that will surely work. Let me just explain. So basically, it's something like this.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. All right. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Wait. Hold on. Wait. No. Wait. What did you want to tell me? Both of you guys. What did you want to tell me? Double check. Safety first. Double check.
And while I feel for people inside studios who, at the end of the day, are just trying to keep their jobs and livelihoods, and that is not bad, it's just human. However, they have to understand that by doing this, they're only hurting themselves in the long run, because they commit to a project they have no idea they can deliver on at a time when they literally have no idea what it will look like, what it will feature, how it will play, and so on. They also give this false impression to the public that they have been working on their game since the release of this desperate trailer of theirs. So then you have to defend your awful game by saying, oh no, it's been 10 years since we announced that we have been working on the game, but we've only been actively working on it for the last 5 years, or sometimes even less than that. We were just desperate and didn't want to get shut down, so we thought we'd just deceive you and our publisher in one fell swoop instead. So, do you really save your studio, game and job? Or are you just prolonging its inevitable demise while also destroying the good name you had built before this on your way down? So instead, why not just focus on doing a good job? Making a game your fans will love and thus support by showering you in praise and yes, money too, which your publisher will surely love as well. In other words, why choose to deceive both your publisher and fans with fake, duplicitous promises, antics and tricks when you can please both and get to keep your job and good reputation as well? And I get that maybe you wanted to try something new, or maybe you just wanted to try to add whatever political or social issue you wanted to in your game. That's fine, but it didn't work. So learn from that mistake and move on. Stop doubling down on it, because it only ends up forcing you to stoop to this kind of deceptive, shady and dishonest tactics that only lead to your eventual demise anyway. Only this time, you don't just go down, you go down in disgrace. And even if you are allowed to make one more game, who is going to trust you after this? You lose your reputation, good faith and trust you had built with all your fans throughout the years. So how is this a worthwhile or even viable tactic for a studio? I just don't understand. So yes, while understandably human, this is where this reason gets downright abhorrent, because they basically choose to outright lie to our faces by telling us they're definitely working on this title when nothing much is actually being done or even worked on for the actual game itself. Another reason apparently that they keep giving for this kind of practice is that they need to generate hype for their upcoming game while also saving their jobs, I guess. Because sometimes a literal decade has passed by and the studio hasn't released any other game during those 10 years, so the next game must be hyped at all costs. Which, just what? Since again, this only ends up backfiring because people eventually find out the truth that you've been lying to them, so when your game does come out, you have to face double, if not more, the criticism and outrage. So I don't see how lying helps at all in this regard either. And honestly, even if you do manage to generate some hype for people initially, who will even remember your game in not even 10 years, but in a few weeks' time? So many games are coming out literally almost every day, so what makes you think your trailer 10 years prior to the game's release is going to stick with people? Because I will literally forget even games I'm interested in, and then after years of radio silence, I'll just randomly go, oh yeah, whatever did happen to that game? And then I'll just Google for updates on it. We're literally being bombarded by new games every day, so keeping track of everything is impossible. So this practice makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever, even if they're trying to just keep their jobs or are just genuinely trying to generate some hype for the next game. The road to hell is paved with good intentions after all. But even in this case, these fake niceties do not even sound like good intentions to begin with. So this practice is very flawed, in my opinion at least, as the benefits do not seem to be outweighing the drawbacks here. Because unless you're a massive studio like Rockstar who can deliver on their promises eventually, this practice seems counterintuitive to what you're trying to achieve, whether that is trying to keep your job or generating hype for your new game. It only further destroys the little semblance of trust that gamers still have in a handful of studios, and if anything, this practice is yet another reason why you should not blame your fans for the backlash you will eventually get when it was you who lied from the get-go, disregarded fan feedback, and then was mad people held you accountable for your own actions and failure to deliver on your false and fickle promises.